Thank you very much, Mr. Lamanauskas, and thank you as well to our panel for that riveting discussion. Now we move on to our second session, content consumption, what audience wants, and what is data telling us? Kindly sponsored by Pacific Broadband Satellite Limited, the heart of broadband. To introduce our speakers and to moderate this session, please welcome Mr. Paul Matthew, an AI and future-facing tech leader, CXO advisor, management and strategy consulting leader for F500. After a successful 20 years in the corporate sector advising boards and building AI and data and analytic teams, he currently has taken up additional roles in the social sector space, focusing on women and gender bias in AI and empowerment activities. Ladies and gentlemen, your moderator for this session, Mr. Matthew.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. And I think it's so nice to be introduced this way. You feel like you're already on the pedestal, especially when you're introduced by somebody else. I'll be taking over for this session, and we have a wonderful list of speakers on wonderful topics. As all of us know, media, entertainment, broadcasting is moving into a larger space, and a lot of it one can thank maybe if there are any reasons to thank COVID and work from home and changing consumer habits. I think one of those would be how the world has sort of leap jumped or leap crossed a lot of digital growth or advancements in this time. I'll just quickly introduce briefly the speakers, and when each of the speakers starts speaking, I'll give them a larger introduction out there. But before I start, I need to really thank AIBD and its organizers, Ms. Philomena, Nabil, and the entire team, as well as the Malaysian policy bodies for organizing, as well as Fiji, and all the sponsors for organizing this event. One of the, let's not put it as rules, but one of the ways we would like to conduct this particular session is, since time is of important essence, please do put up your questions on the chat if it's possible. Otherwise, we have almost 4 to 5 speakers, and we will take up the questions soon after they speak. Each of the presentations should be very brief, of almost 5 to 8 minutes. After every speaker speaks, we will go on to the next speaker, and after these 5 speakers, we will take in questions. Let me just introduce you quickly to these 5 speakers and allow the first speaker to take over. First we have is Gus Seebeck. Gus Seebeck is from Australia. He's a founder and managing director of Clutch TV, a new premium global streaming service dedicated to local sport. Followed by Gus, we have Sam Majid. Sam is the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer for MCMC, Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission. Followed with, we have Dr. Bharat Mohan, who's from India and the founder and Chief Executive Officer for Sensera TV. And then we have Martha Diaz from Madrid, Spain. Martha is the Product Marketing Manager, Jump Data Driven Intelligence. And then we have none other than our Ravi Ratan Arora, Chief Executive Officer, Decision Craft, USA. By just hearing the list of speakers, you can imagine the kind of depth we are going to get into with respect to data analytics and understanding the consumer. And these insights, I'm sure, are going to yield a lot of benefits for the audience here today, and if the same can be available outside. Let me introduce our first speaker once again. We have Gus Seebeck, founder and managing director of Clutch TV. Clutch TV is a new premium global streaming service dedicated to local sport. Gus has over 20 years of experience in sports media, working in free to air as well as subscription TV and media rights agencies. So that means quite a bit of experience out there. You can see Gus's elaborate introduction on the screen as well. Gus, welcome to today's session, and looking forward to these wonderful insights from your experience and your organization, Clutch TV. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry, I don't seem to be able to share my screen. So I did have a couple of slides, but we can press on because I know we're short of time. So I don't want to hold everyone up. Thank you for the introduction. It's lovely to be here with everybody. As Mr. Paul mentioned, I'm the founder and managing director of Clutch TV, which is a new premium sports streaming service, but dedicated very much towards local sport. So what we've found in Australia, and I'm sure it may resonate in other parts of the region as well, is that through the COVID lockdown period, obviously when a lot of major sports and international sports were forced to close because of COVID, there was a lot of focus put back onto local communities. And what we have found in Australia across a large variety of sports, so not only football and rugby and the other major participation sports, but also netball and many other sports, we have found a greater connection now back to community sports. And we've also found that audience is actually resonating right across the world. So Clutch TV is available to view, very similar to a lot of other streaming services, so able to view across the web and across dedicated mobile apps for iOS and Android, and also Apple TV and Android TV. And really that's about providing local community sport with a more premium platform so that we can attract more advertising and create a greater audience. So obviously when it comes to community sport, a lot of the individual audiences for a number of those games are quite small, but when they are aggregated and brought together into one platform, which is either under a Clutch TV brand or a brand of sorry, I've just been able to share my screen now, so I might just try to do this and hopefully everyone can see this now. And we can see here that we have a number of platforms across a number of different sports. So we have our aggregated platform, plus we own and operate a number of dedicated sports platforms for individual sports. So I want to spend a little bit of time quickly, I know we don't have long, but just focusing on NPL TV, which is our premium football platform for local football, Premier Leagues across a number of different 18 different competitions, and we have over 2,500 games. So men's NPL, women's NPL, and youth NPL, which is National Australian Premier Leagues, feeding into the A-League, which is obviously the national competition. So even though all of these games generate out of Australia, you can see here what the layout of the app looks like here and on tablet as well. So this is all about bringing a premium aggregated viewing experience to the next level down of sport, which perhaps hasn't had this opportunity and maybe has previously been limited to streaming only on YouTube or Facebook. So we now have a dedicated premium app experience. And you can see this global map here that even though obviously the largest dot representing the largest audience is obviously from Australia, which we would expect, you can see we have audiences across the course of this year from well over 100 different countries. Now, obviously football being the world game, there are a number of families and participants in Australia who have strong friendships and family ties back to different parts of Europe and throughout the rest of the world. But in a very short period, this service has only been operating since February this year. We've been able to generate audiences from, as you can see, almost certainly every continent, but a large number of countries centered around Europe, Asia, South America, and typical larger football markets. So what does that mean for us when we talk about the way that we work on our content? So we operate what we essentially call a participant and team-led audience growth model when it comes to community sport. So obviously there are people who have a very strong interest in the sport because they know someone who's playing. So it's either a family member or a friend, and we call them a first or second degree network. So they have a close connection to that person. They typically want to watch the live event. And what you can see from the data that we had in the previous slide is even if they're on the other side of the world and it's in the middle of the night, they will still take time out of their evening to watch the long form live content. And we believe that the first and second degree networks have a greater propensity to pay because it obviously means a lot more to them. So they will be more open to a subscription or transaction model because of the connection that they have to that participant and that team. And they are also most likely to consume the long form live content. And then we move slightly out a little further. This might be extended family. It might be people who have played for the team before, general football fans, just people who are interested if there's live content served to them that they will watch. So we call these sort of third and fourth degree networks wider connections to the team or the players, probably less likely to watch long form 2-hour live content windows, But if they can be served highlights or mini matches or short form content, potentially through our platform or otherwise through social content, we know that they're interested and that they will engage with that content. And obviously there's more of them. So whilst there's not so many necessarily smaller in the blue circle in the side who have the direct connections to the team, as you go wider, more people, so more interest in non-live and highlights content, probably less likely to pay potentially to watch or subscribe, but they will be open to advertising. So a slightly different commercial model served more by AVOD or authenticated advertising VOD platforms, which we can generate. So I know I'm almost running out of time. The last thing I just wanted to talk about what's next for us in terms of a community sport level. We have a significant number of events that come through our platform, over 300 live events every week now. So well over 1,000 events every month. For us, it's very important that discoverability is easy. So people want to come on, they don't want to have to scroll through 1,000 events to find the one that they watch. They need to be able to come on and say, I want to watch this particular team, or I want to watch this school, or I want to watch this university. And it needs to be very easy within 2 or 3 clicks for them to be watching their stream. So that's a big focus for us and for the wider, I think, OTT audience with the proliferation of streaming platforms. Needs to be easy to find things, needs to become personalized. So we need to be able to remember what people like when they log on, so that we ideally can serve the content that they like higher up in the platform. So different people come on and watch different things. Everybody, when they watch on Clutch TV, have to register and have an account to log in. So then through our AI and machine learning, we start to learn everybody's content preferences. And ideally, they're able to have a more personalized experience. And then we need to tell more stories. So we need to make more people care about more of the sports, more of the athletes. And that comes through a lot of non-live. We've seen the impact of documentary programming in sports, the way that what it's done for Drive to Survive on Netflix and what it's done with other genres of content. No different at community sports level. There's some amazing stories. We need to tell those stories to create greater connections. And a lot of that can come through more of the highlights and the non-live content. So Mr. Paul, I'm going to finish there. Thank you for your time. It was nice to chat to everyone, albeit very briefly. And hopefully we'll have some questions towards the end of the session if anyone has any questions. And I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, Gus. I think this was quite power-packed for the last 5 to 10 minutes, and really appreciate for you to taking us through. One of the few learnings I think that I could pick up if I were to just summarize these points was the power of using network and proliferating streaming technology through network, using AI machine learning for customization or hyper-personalization, thereby impacting experience, and also the in-depth power of storytelling, right?
And also, it doesn't have to be, we don't need 4 and 5 cameras to have elaborate, more cameras as you would expect. A lot of what we do is only 1 camera, but it gives the opportunity for those audiences to engage, which is, of course, what they're after in the first place. And then we can start to build that out.
Sure. Thank you, Gus. I'm going to keep the questions for later, but really appreciate you for giving your time.
Thank you.
Next on list, we have somebody really amazing who's done quite a body of work in business transformation, especially in the technology space, who's worked across several sectors, from government to telecommunications and digital e-commerce, and a whole lot of content of him going to talk about content consumption and also his experience in this role. Let's welcome Sam Majid, Chief Technology and Innovation Officer, MCMC Malaysia. Sam, welcome to today's session. Let's just check if your voice is audible, and then it's on to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hi Paul. Yes, thank you for the invitation.
Yes, Sam, you're really audible. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here, and I had an opportunity to hear the previous presenter, and certainly data tells a lot of stories, and we here at MCMC, we are a regulator for the telecommunication, broadcasting, and postal courier industry, and we use data in so many different fashion. For example, we use data to understand where the industries are going, what stakeholders require from us to probably define new policies and new regulations so that we can upkeep and even improvise on way things are being done. Uh, Also, we interface with the public. Public come to us if they have any issues on quality or need for any better products coming from the industry. So interfacing to the public of 30 million basically gives us a finger on the pulse on what does the public require from a regulator and the industry. It shows things like preferences, it shows things like thoughts and patterns, and we can see that the society changes. Obviously we have things that are done before COVID, things that are done during COVID lockdown period, and now we are coming out of it into the endemic phase. We can see that patterns and preferences are changing continually. I would say there's no such thing as too much data as well. But one thing that we do need to do, especially here in Malaysia, is more about classifying what sort of data we have, so that we can understand that some data are pretty much can be made available to other people as well. Some data are pretty much top secret. Maybe it's for your eyes only. Some data for internal consumption for the benefit of more analytics and machine learning. So as we go into all these things, we find that there can never be enough data. There are always use cases because of demand from the public, demand from industry that we need to dive into, insights into what can happen rather than what has happened has been a lot more important these days. So therefore, investment into upskilling in areas of data science and machine learning has been a bit more on the table compared to the past. And this is where it is not enough that we give that we give reports of what happened in the past, but we need to tell ourselves what may happen today and tomorrow. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Sam. I think this was wonderful. Um, in a nutshell, if I were to just summarize what Sam was trying to tell, it is, first of all, let me just put my personal opinion out there. I think, Sam, you have touched upon something on transformation delivery with respect to data, which it's what my body of work for the last 20 years, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. Um, there's never too much data in today's world, right? And again, going back to what COVID and what work from home or what confinement to home and what consumption has done is that our also combined with our technology capability of taking in a lot of data, there's never too much of data. But just that with confinement at home of people, the more data patterns have emerged or more data footprint has increased, right? Followed with the biggest challenge now that's coming is how are you going to classify them? There are a lot of techniques that's coming in, whether it is automated, supervised, semi-supervised, and otherwise, and also the ability to carve in what we really need to pull in there, and for what purpose are we going to take that in? While we do the classification, Sam's is extremely cautious about sensitivity of that data, right? Some of it's confidential, some of it's sensitive, some of it has PI and PII, right? And finally, Sam also touches upon the resource part of actually making this transformation work, getting the right skill in, especially in today's world where, at least in today's technology world, where every third person is a data scientist. We have a joke out here saying that if you throw a stone, it's likely it'll hit a data scientist for sure, right? So that's wonderful. And this perspective really makes a lot of sense. I have a lot of questions for Sam, but before I take time asking more questions and taking away time, let's go on to our next speaker. We have Dr. Bharat Mohan, right? Dr. Bharat Mohan is actually the Chief Executive Officer, founder of Sensora Technologies in Bangalore. Dr. Bharat Mohan also has this particular Sensora TV startup is his brainchild, and One thing that interests me about Bharat is that um, he would probably be one of the true blue blood media and entertainment profiles we have today. I'll tell you what blue blood here means is that number one, he's got a PhD on information retrieval and machine learning from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which is the most premium scientific organizations in India. He's worked at Google, right? He's worked at Disney plus Hotstar, Xiaomi, Sony, Airtel, and where not, right? Let's hear it from Dr. Bharat Mohan on what he has today to share and how Sensor TV and Bharat Mohan together have created AI products to help transformation of media enterprises. Over to you, Bharat.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's really my pleasure to be here as part of this forum. The very interesting topic, in fact, about 4 years back, everyone was worried about, okay, there's OTT coming. What's the future of broadcast? Will the traditional broadcast industry still work or not? A lot of questions, a lot of scaremongering, probably by vested forces which wanted OTT to win. And we set out, thanks to our partners who wanted to put in place a very good measurement system for what's happening, what the trends are, so that they could change their strategies accordingly. So we've had the privilege of setting up a hybrid measurement system in India across partners like Airtel and Xiaomi and so on, to really find out like where the world is moving, is OTT consuming, and also to usher in a new age of much better insights of audience preferences and so on. I just wanted to share a few thoughts on this about the key kind of questions that we've been able to ask and answer at the scale of this, the amount of data that's actually flowing through. So I'll share my screen and take you through a few slides on this. Okay, thank you. What we were trying to kind of answer was, is TV going to become more OTT? What's going to happen to broadcast? Can they coexist? Can they be on one screen and so on? And over the last 3 years, we've had the opportunity to kind of across our partners kind of see what's happening. How are user preferences going? Is it going towards one or the other? And we had fascinating insights. I just wanted to share a few thoughts on that while we get in. And before this, we are, as Sensara as a company, we work with the tier ones out there. And the way we think about this is, you will not get TV insights if you do not understand content, and you will not get TV insights if you do not understand audiences. So on the audience side, we work with people like Airtel, Xiaomi. In fact, we have a relationship with Bark as well, which is a measurement body here. And on the content owner side, we work with Disney, Sony, soon with Z, and even rights holders like Aditya Music and so on. So it gives us a nice perspective of what is happening to content and what is happening to audiences as well. And what I'm trying to distill is to come up with a few measures on this. One important aspect is measurement requires multiple perspectives. You cannot just have one measurement agency and say, okay, let them decide what's good for everyone, because not all parts of audiences are the same. Their metro people think differently, students think differently, and all of them think differently, right? So you want to measure different types of audiences. You want to capture transforming TV habits. And there's another key option of, can you measure first party properties, right? There is something called as the home screen, which is probably the most important advertising property on television today, because everyone, when they turn on the TV, they get to see some banners over there. What can you measure over here? Okay, can you figure out attention and then unify all of this was the key question that we had. When we deployed our systems in this connected TV platforms, either the TV or the set-top boxes, which are obviously Android-based or Linux-based, but there's a return path data. What we are now exposed to across about 2 million households is huge amount of data, 200,000 requests that are coming in that we need to handle, kind of decorate the data with what's happening on the screen, and then feed it into maybe an OLAP system to draw insights, right? What comes out of this is massively interesting thing. And I'm trying to give comparisons of what happens when you throw a different data set. Firstly, there is churn. You have, we constantly try to compare how our results look different from the top measurement body. Now, the good thing is there's a lot of churn. When I say churn, it means that there's a lot of differences, which means that, hey, TV is not the same. When you go far out and wide, people's behavioral habits are very, very different. So the sample set that you choose kind of matters a lot. This was one key insight that we got. So all aspects of insights, you need to decide who is this relevant for, and hence this matters. Another key question that people always had is, how is TV viewing split up? How much of time is spent on apps? How much of time is spent on linear? And the key insight that we got out was 4 hours of TV viewing, 3 hours was actually spent on linear. Linear continues to dominate, which is the beauty of what we've been seeing. And about an hour of OTT, which we are noticing. And OTT on the large screen is still dominated by YouTube, although a lot of noise happens on from all the other players. It's still very, very strongly dominated by YouTube. Another key question that people have is like, how many cord cutters are there? If you are constantly plugged into news, they'll think that everyone's cut the cord and nobody's watching broadcast anymore. But we saw a different story. All homes are actually becoming hybrid. What this means is they're like, I want my TV. I don't care where it gets from. If it's good content, it's coming through broadcast or through OTT, I'm going to sit and watch it. So there's a certain convenience to broadcast, and that's what is being adopted, which is what we are noticing. So we expect the broadcast homes to actually grow, and the cord cutters are actually quite small because they are the naysayers there. A lot of interesting insights that we got about how many times do people switch between channels, how many times do what's the daily reach of the home channel, which is massive amount of inventory that operators can kind of monetize. What all of this brought in was we are looking at new monetization models that are available just through opening up data sets that are available even on linear TV. While there's a lot of marketing around, okay, switch to OTT and then you can monetize TV better, we believe that even existing broadcast channels, and I know a lot of this forum actually has free-to-air channels and broadcast channels, if those channels are consumed on connected devices, right, which have return path data, there's massive opportunity to monetize there. And we got a lot of insight. There's new business models that are coming about how to monetize the home channel activity and so on. So I'll stop there. Of course, I have a little bit more material. I can jump into this, but the idea that we are seeing is there are going to be audience continents of insights largely held by TV operators and telcos. And in a privacy preserving way, they will open this up to the rest of the industry to come gather their insights, take their insights, use it for better audience targeting, do it for better content design and so on. And there's like an entire content ecosystem in terms of audience data that's coming in, with all the private players also going to be contributing to this. And we are at work with many players across the board trying to bridge this gap together, right? That was the overall theme that I wanted to share. Thank you for that. We can chat more when during the Q&A session.
Wow, Bharat, thank you for these. I think this is extremely insightful and high energy presentation with scores of data points. It was really difficult for me to note down, but I think I captured some parts of this, and I'm sure the audience is going to have a lot of questions, and I am going to have a lot of questions for you. But one thing that really caught my mind is that you have created an ability to capture transforming and not just capture, but also measure transforming habits, multiple perspectives, and also those perspectives on the move. The insight that all homes are getting hybrid is really wonderful, because people would like to think otherwise. Also finding new avenues for monetization, maybe using that data and creating a content ecosystem to further monetize with other sectors as well. I know I've not been prudent at capturing all of it, but I think it's really insightful. Would really like to quiz your mind as we go forward. But thank you, Bharat, for your presentation. Please hold on for the next speaker, and then we can go deep dive into this thing. We have Martha DS from Madrid, Spain, who's coming in next. And this is going to be quite interesting because we have covered Malaysia, we have covered Australia, we have covered the Indian perspective, although all of us are global citizens. But I'm sure with organizations coming from different parts of the world, there's a lot of insights in it. Martha Diaz is a product marketing manager for Jump Data Driven Intelligence from Spain. She comes with an extensive background in business administration and product management in the video streaming and data analysis sector. Among amazing insights, she's going to do a little bit of deep dive about the power of data and the importance of audience segmentation to grow business. Martha, let's just check if your audio is there, and then it's over to you.
Hello, Paul. Thank you so much for the introduction. So yes, I am Marta Diaz. I am a product marketing manager at Jump Data Driven Video, and I'm very excited to be here today. First of all, a quick introduction about Jump. We are a data enablement company that focuses on helping OTT and video platforms to not only get and analyze, but also be able to make the most out of the data that they have to grow the business. So I'm going to talk today about what my audience wants and what data is telling us about it. And more specifically, the importance of audience segmentation here. So the first step here is that it is important to know that you don't have just one audience, but many individuals that behave differently in your platform. So what we have to do is to identify the different niches in your video platform and even get to understand the users at a very individual level. This way, we will be able to launch personalized marketing campaigns and to make the right content recommendations. So as a general thing, what we have to understand is that aggregated data is not enough. Individual level is key. Your audience is composed of several communities and data shows that. And we don't have to believe the hype because popularity is your whole audience. So how can we segment the audience? So the most consumed format in your video platform, so if it's a movie or a series or a documental, you will be able to make better decisions on what content you should invest more or what kind of promotions you have to make. So for example, if 30% of your audience watches more series than movies, and the other 70% consume more movies than series, you have to be able to make the right recommendations knowing that. And this is important to take into account apart from the popularity, because maybe the most popular content in your platform is a movie, but that is not the better thing that you will have to recommend to someone who's more into series. So the same thing happens when we talk about gender. Some people like drama, some people like comedy, some people like both. So we don't have to recommend the most popular content in the platform to everyone. We should focus on making individual recommendations based on their tastes and behaviors. So here we should have into account that different engagement levels also means different consumption behaviors. For example, someone who comes once a week to our platform might like a specific movie than another user who comes every day to watch a series. And same as before, people do not consume the same in different locations. This will be some examples. So understand content to understand audience is key. That's for sure. So content metadata affects it all. Content tagging impacts the understanding of the audience behavior. This is because if all of our content is tagged as something too generic, like drama, like here in this example, we won't be able to segment the audience properly, and therefore we won't be able to make the right recommendations and effective promotions. There are drama with comedy, drama for teenagers, drama with some action. So content is king and audience is queen. And we have to learn how to understand this marriage. So a data-driven approach to content management is key to increase consumption, as individuals will have an easier search and discovery experience. And it can help to, first of all, automatically identify the most successful content on each specific day or time of the day or device. Also to support licensing or production prioritization based on which content or types or attributes better fit your audience, identify the content gems, meaning that understand which content is driving more trials into paying users to your video service. That's very important. And then also to discontinue or release the non-performing content. So there are different angles from where we can see content performance. So for example, content category performance or by top performing content. Also here, what are my audience favorite devices for top content consumptions? Also very important to know which content is not performing well. So as a conclusion, after having data into account, we can get to know not only what audience wants, but what they don't know yet that they want. So the goal here will be to get to know the audience better than what they know themselves. So this is an example of a recommendation that we can make from the data that we have, a kind of recommendation that is based on the user similarity. So based on data, we are able to predict what a specific user wants based in the community he's part of, considering that if you have similar preferences than another person in the same group, their preferences in a new topic will probably be very similar. And these are other ways to make recommendations. And the good thing, something that we do at Jump, will be to combine all these kind of recommendations to really get to have the perfect recommendation engine. So what does personalization mean? What does segmentation mean? So data makes it possible to reduce content search times, meaning that your users are going to be more engaged and satisfied with your platform. The buy rates will increase, also increase the viewing and then playback activity and the customer lifetime value, because if you are able to access and reach the right audience or the right users for your platform, so you're gonna make sure that they're gonna stay longer. And this is pretty much it. Thank you so much for your time. Again, this is Marta Diaz, and I will be more than happy to talk to you. So whenever you want to contact me, here's my email address. And thank you so much. Bye.
Wonderful, Martha. But Martha, I think one thing that I'm really, really going to remember from your presentation, from your talk, is that, and I'm going to use this with your permission, is content is king and audience is queen. Well, Philomena has weighed in with her decades of experience in saying it's more like audience is king and content is queen. Either ways, you know, it's the marketeer's language and it's practical language. Both has its own weightage. But the most important part is how do you marry the both? Okay. And how do you get more transferable controls in managing this? So I would basically, you know, weigh in and say that it is the context, right? When you bring both the audience and the content together, it is in what context are you going to apply what kind of promotions, and how do you actually capture individual behavior? These are some of the questions I'm going to come to you with. Until then, Martha, let's go on to our next speaker and then open the forum for questions. Thank you very much, Martha. Excuse me. So we have next out here amongst us, one of my favorite speakers, last but not the least, we have Ravi Arora, Chief Executive Officer, Decision Craft USA. Ravi is an alumnus of the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, is the CEO of Decision Craft in Greater New York area. Decision Craft runs a TV advertisement monitoring service in New York under the commercial name C-Track. C-Track has done quite a bit of wonderful work. Namely, Ravi had set up and run a 7,000 households TV audience measurement panel in India. With that experience, Decision Craft developed an end-to-end audience measurement system, which includes people meters, software, hosting, and the system was deployed sometime back, and I'm sure it has progressed into various continents as well. Let's welcome Ravi Arora to our forum, and also keeping in mind that it's almost past midnight from where Ravi is speaking. Really thank you, Ravi, for coming in today for our session. And we do have some time in hand as well. Ravi, over to you. Let's just check your audio and let's go forward from here.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. Okay. as Paul said, we built a system. We built a people meter and the entire system to do TV research, audience research, and audience measurement. But the purpose of this talk is not to present the system that we have. What I want to share with you is my experiences in this business. So my entire experience has been with TV audience measurement. And I've been to Mexico, to Malaysia, to Bulgaria, Switzerland, Brazil. So I've seen how the business has worked in these countries. So I want to share some of my experiences with more focus on what is data? How much data do we need? I mean, do we really use the data that we need? Is data a need for us, or is it a fetish? So, so it might, sound like a kind of a dissenting note with some of the speakers who put so much of premium on data, and I may be saying something very different. So I'll just share my screen and, walk you through a couple of slides. There's a kind of, data has become a kind of fetish. I've been in this business for almost 20 years. There was a time everybody said data analytics, because this industry needs new buzzwords every 2-3 years. A couple of years later, everybody changes CV and they say, oh, we are into big data. Now, all those people who used to write their CV with big data, write their CVs saying we are into machine learning, AI, same stuff, things happen. What has created this, fetish for data? I think in case of data, the supply has created its own demand. The cost of computing has gone down, the cost of storage has gone down. Therefore, anything that, even if you don't need it, everything is stored. So you have immense amount of data. And then, once there is so much of data, then you say, well, you try to make sense out of it. I mean, even if you, no matter how much data you have, Paul just said, you just cannot have enough data, right? Earlier he said, but I'm saying you don't need to test each grain of rice to see if it's cooked. So very often we have too much data, a deluge of data scientists. Today, anyone who can use Excel calls himself data scientist. And you can check their CVs for last 5-10 years, where it goes. So what's happening is with so much of data, I'll share my experiences about this data. In the age of artificial intelligence, we are creating artificial stupidity. That's what. So my experience with rating business is, okay. So when it comes to TV audience measurement, it's a case of the tail wagging the dog. The rating company invests a couple of $1 million in the business, and then it decides the fate of trillions of dollars. What happens to you? So Nielsen would put in some money, or GFK would put in, the amount of money they put in is nothing compared to the amount of money that industry has put in. So tail is wagging the dog. No rating company will ever tell you that all panels deteriorate. They will not tell you that the numbers go wrong. They will not tell you that they cannot defend the numbers they produce. And they also will not tell you that the incentive to fix the game is too high. My experience is, when I travel to a lot of countries, that nobody wants the right numbers. Everybody wants high numbers. In one country, when they asked my advice, I said, well, if you are starting rating service, from the day one, if your numbers are higher than the number given by the competition, you possibly have a chance. So if you are going to, if the competition is saying that on an average people watch TV for 5 hours a day, and if your system says they watch for 7 hours a day, then the media buyer doesn't care. He just wants to go and tell his client, I bought you more GRP for the same amount of money. That's about it. This is a business in which the advertiser doesn't watch TV because he's spending all the time in his office. The media planner is working till 11 at night, so he's spending all the time there. But and the agency. So but everything is being bought and sold on numbers. So my experience is that nobody wants the right numbers. Everybody wants high numbers. Number one. Number two, even if you come and tell me something, you come and tell me that 15 minutes from now I'm going to die. That information has zero value unless I can do something with it. If I can tell my wife, this is my password for the my email account, it has some value. But if I can do nothing about it, it has zero value. So a lot of insight that we talk about these days, actually, the organizations do not have the system to act on them. And therefore, it sounds sexy, it sounds nice to talk about data, but nothing much happens. I'll give you my experience. When we used to run a rating service, there were 20 reports that the users could make. 99% of the users made only one report. They just did not want to know anything else. They just wanted to know what are the TRPs for this show, so that they can go to the advertiser or the agency and say, these are the TRPs, this is my price, that's it. So they use data only for selling the ad time. And therefore, no matter how many reports you give, they don't care. Even in the system that we sell today, there are 20 reports, but the data shows that people run only 2 reports. So very often, we talk about data, we say all the right things, but we do all the wrong things. My other experience was that the industry had very inadequate expertise about the rating business. So, industry in the sense, the broadcasters themselves or the media professionals, a lot of media professionals can talk of market share and a lot of metrics, but give them some raw numbers and ask them to calculate some metrics, and you will find them they know nothing. They can ask you what's the margin of error, but you give them some numbers and say, can you please calculate margin of error? They don't know what is margin of error. So there's very little expertise on this with people. And the rate and other thing I saw with the rating services was that their entire focus was on the private channel. So the amount of attention that they gave to public broadcasters was always very, very limited. As I said before, the media professionals are more like media automatons. They know the jargon, but beyond that, they don't know much. So my experience in almost 7-8 countries is that TV rating business is a business in which the blind lead the blind. I said before, this industry needs a new buzzword every few years. It was data mining, it was data analytics, it was big data, now it's machine learning. And to quote a Nobel Prize winner, British economist, if you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. You can prove anything with data. You can take 2 very contradictory positions and prove that. Okay. So when we talk of, I'll give you a simple example of, which everybody knows about Netflix. Netflix gave $1 million prize to anyone to people who will build the best model to predict what the viewers would like to see. All the mathematicians, the best minds in the world jumped in. They formed teams. They competed. At the end of it, one team won. They allowed the teams to merge at some point in time, and the model was given. So actually, you had to give all the models to a Netflix, which they used to, so that they wanted to collect as much intelligence as possible, as much knowledge as possible. After paying $1 million, one team won $1 million. Somebody won $1 million, and Netflix had all the models. What did they do? They did not use one single mod. The only thing they used was people who watch this also watch this. That's where it ended. After doing all the work. So that's the trick about data. A lot of talk right now in these times. It's all the more important to be very careful when people talk about data, because as I said, anyone who knows Excel is a data scientist. My suggestion, therefore, would be to the broadcasters, particularly I suppose most of the participants right now are broadcasters. Build expertise. Just don't blindly go by jargon. With the rating service, insist on active participation. When I went to Mexico, I went to a broadcaster. The broadcaster said, "Can you leave 3 people meters with us? Connect to the TV set." On the TV set, we would keep changing channels and we'll keep writing in a diary at what time what did we do. And the next day you come and tell us what did we do. So if you can really tell us what did we do, then your technology is fine. Otherwise, we don't trust it. That is the kind of involvement that you need. But whereas you can speak to a lot of broadcasters, they've never seen a people meter. They don't even have the courage. They don't even think that they are, much bigger than the rating company. They don't even have the courage to tell the rating company, give me 3 meters, put 2 meters in my office, or if not in my office, in the Broadcasting Association's office somewhere, so that, and we'll keep changing channels and you come and tell us that it's working. So I would say, be active, participate with your rating company. Insist on a lot of transparency. amongst the user, I mean, I'm not getting into specific. It sounds like very abstract advice, but because if I start going into details, it will take much longer time. But I would say, what happened? Did something happen? My screen got lost, right?
You can reshare your screen, sir, and if you can just wind up, because our next session is about to start, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure, no problem. Yeah. So my suggestion is that build expertise, participate actively, insist on transparency, and remember that all that glitters is not gold. I think again my slide is not moving, but I think that's all that. I mean, I think this is good enough. What I finished.
Wonderful, wonderful, Ravi. I think this is wonderful. And if I were to just say something, and the stand that you have taken as a contrarian view to the most populist things that people would love to talk about, it actually gives us a lot of insight. It reminds me of something called survivorship bias, where people tend not to look at the data that's not available and try to find results, like the British economist Ronald Coase that you quoted. If you torture data enough, it will confess, right? So apart from the fact that you also mentioned people are actually moving from artificial intelligence to artificial stupidity. I think that's a wonderful point and perspective that you brought. Now, as names change every 18 months, maybe something like the Moore's law, maybe some other law has to be proposed very soon for the name changing thing that's happening.
Broadband connectivity to rural and suburban communities at an affordable price. Now, Pacific is deploying innovative breakthroughs on the ground with a new line of high-performance and cost-effective broadband terminals.
We connect the unconnected masses of Southeast Asia and Pacific at an affordable price. At Pacific, we are committed to enabling businesses, governments, and community